All right, we're going to continue our talks today on episode 2
Episode 2. I repeat, 2.
of our discussions of the evolving role of men in the world, masculinity, women, and our archetypes behind those, and how our modern culture, in some aspects, we feel, are not really addressing the deeper conversations and ideas of those things. So today, Davison, what did we want to kind of couch in the conversation?
Right. Welcome to Quantum Masculinity, everybody. We're both your hosts, depending on who's talking. The first thing is, so we spoke a little bit about on the first episode how I think most men and leaders in the masculine culture, let's say, are talking about really the top 1% of men, 0.1% that are making all the money and have all the status, and they just want to optimize for sex and have sex with all the women and kind of hog all the women for themselves. Which again, to each their own. No judgment on what they decide to do, but we do feel at the end of the day that this is pretty unrealistic to tell all men to try to be. If someone really wants to do that, again, to each their own. But we try to bring a more realistic approach to it.
Yeah.
For the average man, everyday men wanting to be in the top, 5, 10, 20%, in a more realistic sense. So one thing that I've seen a lot, particularly on the Fresh and Fit podcast in Miami, the dude Myron talks a lot about how he has a bunch of girlfriends, and so just the difference in polyamory versus monogamy, polygamy, swingers, all that stuff. And so again, so having multiple girlfriends, if you're a high status man, you're making a lot of money, and you're on the yacht, you have that quintessential environment that you've cultivated, and you have the work that you've done, and you have that respect. You can command multiple women in that sense, the women that are willing to do that, sure. But again, from a realistic sense, what do you guys really want at the end of the day? I don't think most people in the culture right now are talking about how men really do want to find love. I think that's a reasonable thing to say.
Well, and again, those ideas can be fluid, right? So our traditional roles, and I think it's important to understand and have the conversation about why families were formed the way they were, right? I mean, really, it's about raising children, the biological imperative, hundreds of years ago, as we, in different podcasts and different things, they talk about what women offer in those times, right? Purity. But what was that really about? It was about offering something to a man in a dowry, when the father had the daughter, and traditionally, even not even now as much today, but in the past, is the father would pay for the marriage. Well, why would the father pay for the marriage, right? Because he's offering a dowry. So basically, he's giving you, in a sense, and again, these are the old traditions, that you left your father's home as a woman and went to your husband's home, and that was his dowry to you, right? And so it was there's a transition between then, and then of course you had your wife, and then you had children together, and then you got married. And I think, to me, traditional marriage and monogamy, within our belief structure of Christianity or whatever religion that you accept, is driven a lot by that. In order to be successful, I think we can all agree that it's probably better for children to have both parents in the home. Now, again, can parents be dysfunctional? Can that be difficult on children? Can all kinds of dysfunction happen? Of course. But I think traditionally we can accept that it's important for a family unit to be that atomic family, traditionally, and have that success of raising that child. The basic premise is having a child and raising it. And when people made a commitment of marriage for life, I think the concept of life was way different. I again, statistically, life was harder in the past. There was more disease, there was more warfare, um, there was just more things that we did have less control of in our environment around us. So people typically live to, in some instances, in some eras, didn't live much past 40 years old to 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes younger. Again, people had multiple children, and some of them died. More infant mortality was high. The mothers would die a lot. So I think it's again like it's kind of like meeting somebody, falling in love, getting together to make sure that you can raise the children together, stay as a family unit. If you're pioneers, that would make sense. A lot of sense. Like, why would you want multiple wives out there unless you're trying to, again, repopulate? And we could talk about
Mm-hmm.
things that happened in traditional, societies or in history when those things happened and why they happened. And there are cultures in the world that do practice that
Mm-hmm.
the polygamy. Is there an advantage to that? Maybe. Is there an advantage to the other one? Potentially. It's really hard to say, but I think the success of it all is like, are we having children? Are those children successfully raised? Right? And that cycle continues.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, to me, a lot of times when we make a marriage commitment, we say for life. I don't really think that we understand how long we'll actually live now. I think we don't really have a concept, because when you're 25 years old, do you really have a concept of what 80 years old is like? You don't.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You just think it's old, but you don't realize how much time that is, and how much can change in that time.
Yeah.
How much you can change, how much they can change, how much the economics can change. There's so much in those dynamics that can change between you and somebody else. So it's a romanticized idea that I fully support. My grandparents were married when they were 18 and 17 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and they stayed married until they passed away in their 90s.
Mm.
And it was a beautiful thing, and an honorable thing, and something I admire.